I appreciate that, guys. And we have a FanDuel ticket to show you guys in one sec that actually helps someone win a lot of money on the Browns game. And if you want to be like our winning FanDuel ticket winner of the day, you can score early in the NFL season with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, brand new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins by placing an easy $5 winning moneyline bet. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL and an official partner of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. The Browns open this week as a 5.5-point underdog against Baltimore on FanDuel. And our winning ticket of the day comes from Tanios Henry, who had a 4-part same-game parlay on the Browns. I take that back, a 6-part same-game parlay on the Browns this week. He had Deshaun Watson over 1.5 touchdown passes, over 203 passing yards. Amari Cooper over 90 receiving yards. Kareem Hunt anytime touchdown. Browns on the money line and under 46.5 points. And that turned $2.35 into $102.47, a 50-to-1 return on investment for our guy Tanios.
Yeah, that was I wouldn't have sounded like a tricky parlay. I would have thought that would hit, but nice job at him. I saw somebody last night bet $700 on FanDuel for Irv Smith Jr., the Bengals tight end, who had done almost nothing all season.
That's crazy.
To score the first touchdown, and he hit it. It was 28-1. I'm surprised it wasn't 100-1.
Wow. That's
You put 700 on it?
Yeah, but unless I'm reading it wrong, it's hard to see my eyes.
What is that?
My eyes on my phone. I don't know. I don't know. 28 times 7.
Well, it was $7, not 70.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Yeah. My bad.
I was going to say.
It's hard to see on my phone. I should be wearing. I wear glasses when I read. I should really wear glasses for my phone, too, because it's a little hard for me to see. So he bet $7. And how much did he win? $2,800?
Yeah, 7 times 28 would be...
No.
Like 200, right?
Yeah, he won $200.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more than...
Still a good win and still a good hit. And shout out to that guy.
Anyway,
but, Bull,
yeah.
You alluded to it 1 second ago. This defense yesterday was so good. I don't give a rat's you-know-what about the opponent, Clayton Tune, whoever. To hold the team to 58 total yards and 0 points while forcing 3 turnovers and getting 7 sacks is as impressive as a defensive performance as we've seen in a long time.
By the way, this is a first in the history of fantasy football this has ever happened to me. I have a league where I have the Browns defense. Okay, this league is a very high-scoring league. Like a good week is – most fantasy leagues, if you score 150 points, that's a great week. In this league, a great week is 250 points.
Yeah,
to put it in perspective. Like that, okay? The Browns defense, like – a defense is if a defense has a good week, they'll score you 20, 25 points.
Right.
The Browns defense got me 47 points yesterday,
wow. The Browns,
which is the most I think maybe not ever, but the most I've ever gotten. That's how good the Browns defense was. 7 sacks, guys, 3 turnovers. The only thing they didn't actually do was score themselves.
Miles was trying to.
He was on that fumble.
He said Obo tackled him.
But, listen, we all acknowledge that the Cardinals didn't have much talent on offense.
Right.
Fair to acknowledge
They're still
that.
an NFL team.
But, as you said, still an NFL team. And the Browns didn't just play well on defense. They were completely lights out. The best play by the Cardinals all day, they got screwed on that call by the ref. Remember they called that one play towards the end of the first half?
Yeah.
They had like a 25-yard gain. That was a terrible call. Not that it would have mattered. The Cardinals, I think they never got the ball past the Browns 43. Is that correct?
Well, Clayton Tune had a negative ADOT deep into the game, like multiple possessions in the game, and ADOT is average depth of target, how far you're throwing it down the field.
Right.
I've never seen a quarterback have a negative ADOT.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah, because they kept throwing it behind the line of scrimmage and getting tackled right away. It was like negative 3.2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well into the first quarter, maybe even into the second quarter.
Right.
So that just shows you how he had no chance.
Wow.
And 2 of his I think he threw 3 balls over 10 yards and 2 of them were picked off.
Wow.
Like they had no chance.
Well, that throw he made where Denzel Ward made the pick was a terrible throw. However, that was a great play by Denzel Ward.
It was.
That's not an easy – like that ball had some meat, like some some juice on it, and he had to dive.
He threw it behind. He threw
over Marquise Brown.
Over Marquise Brown,
Yeah.
but behind him too.
Yeah,
So
it was a terrible
Denzel's
throw.
momentum was carrying him to the middle of the field. He had to dive back towards the sideline to make the catch.
That was a great play. Denzel Ward, guys, and we'll get to all the other guys who are doing great right now. I think Denzel Ward at the moment, we talk so much about Martin Emerson since he's come in and he's done a great job. I think Denzel, first of all, they could arguably, and now to be fair, I'm not breaking down the corners on other teams. I find it hard to believe there's a better corner tandem right now.
I said that last week.
Yeah.
What did we come up with? The Jets, right?
Somebody
The
mentioned
Jets
the
are
Jets.
up there.
Somebody mentioned the Seahawks is really good.
But they're certainly in
But
the
I don't know.
conversation.
I mean, Denzel Ward is just playing his best football.
This is the best he's played in his career. He's healthy. Knock on wood.
Yep.
We know about his injury past. We know about the concussions. Hopefully that stays. Hopefully he can stay on the field. But he's playing at an incredibly high level. And for a while, especially early on in the game, the Browns were only playing with one cornerback. They had Denzel on the field and Martin was off the field because they had no respect for the Cardinals throwing the ball. They were playing with one cornerback. They knew they were going to run it.
That's crazy. I didn't even realize that.
Go back and watch the first possession of the game. Martin was on the field for the first snap, and then he goes, and I told Zach, I'm like, where's Emerson? He's not even in.
Well, because you have Marquise Brown, they have a terrible quarterback. Their number 2 wide receiver, Wilson, was hurt. He didn't play. And they were using Rondell Moore kind of like a running back.
I checked the snap count because I stopped paying attention after a while.
Yeah.
And Emerson actually played more snaps than Denzel, so it did even out. But early on,
that's funny.
They were playing with one corner because Greg was out, Newsome was out, obviously, and Emerson was on the sideline. It was just Denzel on the field.
Man, I thought Taki did a good job of baiting him on that one throw.
Yeah.
They tried to run a high-low concept, and he was just like, I'm not watching the guy behind me. I'm all on this flat route down here. And they're like, no, I'm not. And he just jumps in front of him and makes an interception. I feel sorry for the Cardinals because I don't know how many times we've watched the Browns and we've had to try out quarterbacks that have even been off the street, or backups, guys that are 6th-round picks, and they come out here and have no shot.
That Cardinals team yesterday looked a lot like a lot of Browns teams we've seen in the last decade.
Typically in December. That's a December Browns team.
December Browns.
Fortunately, it's not the case anymore, but that was
Connor
pitiful.
Shaw.
Why'd you? I was just going to say Connor Shaw. I don't know why. I was going. That's
I wonder
the
what
first
Connor
person
Shaw
I was
is doing these days.
My goodness. And then we would always ask, well, he did have some nice throws.
You always try and talk yourself into it.
I was about bringing him back next year. No.
Well, Clayton Tune did not have one nice throw.
1.6 QBR.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's pretty bad, I'd say.
You mentioned Taki. He's really kind of grown into a serviceable player.
Wow.
A couple of years ago, he was like, oh, man, I don't know how much longer this guy's going to be here. And when he moved into the middle last year after Walker went down, he really sort of came into his own a little bit. And I don't know what the almighty PFF thinks of Sione Taki, but I see him making plays out there.
Well, you know what I've noticed, and maybe this has helped him? He's been playing less. He's taken less snaps, but he's been more effective when he's been in there. I wonder, maybe, some guys, the more you play them, the worse they are.
Yeah.
Some guys are better the more you play them. Maybe Taki's one of these guys, if you just use him in the right spots, he can play well.
It's the Delonte West effect. If you give Delonte West 13 minutes, he's going to have 12 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. If you pay him 19, 20, 30 minutes, he's still going to have that same stat line.
So, Bull, to that point, I saw a tweet from Jack Duffin this morning who had the Browns linebacker snap count percentage done week by week. So, in weeks 1 to week 6, JOK was on the field for 73% of Browns defensive snaps. Anthony Walker, 63%. Taki, 54%. Weeks 7, 8, and 9, the last 3 weeks, Anthony Walker's jumped up 18% from 63% to 81%. So he's essentially on the field at all times.
Yeah.
JOK's dropped from 73% of snaps to 52% of snaps. And Taki's dropped from 54% of snaps to 24%.
Wow. So he's
and
only
also
playing 1 out of 4 plays.
And Tony Fields has gone from 2% to 37%.
But I
wonder if it's a weird trend, if there's anything more to it.
Well, I think you're just playing more DBs.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're just going more 2 linebacker sets and more extra, whether it's Rodney McLeod, 3, you're playing more nickel and even dime and less 3 linebacker sets.
And I didn't see, and I'm anxious to see the film. I mean, I thought Mitchell played a lot in this game, and He wasn't giving up much. I mean, if he can catch the football, he might have a couple picks on this year.
He went to Northwestern.
You know how they feel about that.
That's right.
Interceptions at Northwestern.
Interceptions ain't their
That's
thing.
really not there.
Guys, we've talked a lot about the fact that Jim Schwartz has done a great job, which he has, right? But the biggest difference, the two biggest differences on this team, one, they went from the worst group of defensive tackles to, I don't know where it ranks, but it's certainly in the top 10, I would think. They're playing really well at defensive tackle. And last year the linebackers were all hurt. This year they're all healthy.
Health has
the Browns,
so much to
the
do
Browns
with
have been clobbered by injuries on the offense, which we'll get to with Jed Wills, and we all know that. On defense, knock on wood, they've had almost no injuries. Greg Newsom's been in and out of the lineup a little bit.
Yeah.
Outside of him, everybody else has been, stayed healthy, and that's been a big difference.
And that's what's allowed them to rotate those tackles, which they've never had the depth before to keep rolling new guys in and fresh legs in. This year they've been able to do that because they upgraded the talent and they have depth that's been able to stay healthy.
That's huge.
I've learned after watching them up to this point, when the Cleveland Browns play lights out, when they're getting guys that are getting 58 yards, or all these 3 and out 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a row. Mm-hmm. When you watch them, they're dominant when their defensive tackles are dominant. When you look at it, Dalvin Tomlinson had a crazy game from the defensive tackle position.
2.5 sacks. That's crazy.
Shelby Harris played great yesterday. Jordan Elliott continues to play great. I mean, he's improved his game so much, I don't even recognize him anymore. Like, it's crazy.
Well, it helps when you have much better players around you. I mean,
Yep.
He was like being asked to be like the number one tackle. Well, he's not a number one tackle. Now he's the third or fourth tackle. Okay, and he's picking his spots. They're picking spots for him, and it's working.
When they're disruptive, it's just a problem. Maurice Hurst is playing well.
Yeah.
So we just named 4 defensive tackles that are rotating in, doing their thing. And the crazy part about it is when they start getting penetration and being in the backfield and being disruptive, you almost can't block the ends. You can't block them. Like, there's not you saw Zadarius Smith get another sack today. That's quietly for the Zadarius, 2 sacks, 2 weeks. He's starting to get on the board a little bit.
Yeah.
But when their defensive tackles play like that, they can beat anybody.
And you mentioned Shelby Harris. Like, he hadn't really done much
before
yesterday, and he had his kind of welcome to the Browns moment, because I don't think Maurice Hurst played a ton yesterday for whatever reason. He didn't. He's been playing really well, but he didn't seem to be much of a factor yesterday. But I thought Shelby Harris played great. He showed up. There was a bunch of times where there was pressure on the quarterback or whatever. But, I mean, I think we said this last week too, guys. Who's not playing well on the defense?
It's hard to come up with somebody.
Right? I mean, is there anybody?
Yeah. No. Even the guys they bring in, like Rodney McLeod, he seems to make plays.
Yeah.
And Juan Thornhill is sneaky. Juan Thornhill don't be in the stat sheet a lot because think about it. You got the corners who are making plays in man-to-man.
Yeah.
Defensive lineman is getting after the quarterbacks. We just talked about that. Linebackers are just solid. Juan Thornhill, like, he's sneaky around the ball a little bit. Like, when it was in the end zone, he almost got him to get to safety. Yeah. I'm like, that was a good play. He's really, really solid.
We talked about that last week with him. I've noticed 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe more tackles that he's made where it just looks like a routine tackle. But if he doesn't get that guy down, it's a big play. And Juan has saved a lot of moments where, again, it doesn't look huge in the stats, but watching the game on the field, he's been a game changer. And, we can say what you want about Joe Woods, and we crushed him all last year, and we said that his scheme doesn't fit the personnel, and it wasn't a good match. But how many times do we say, at least I said, fix the defensive tackles, you're going to fix a lot that's wrong with this defense. Yeah. And they've done that.
Yeah.
But the upgrade in the defensive tackles, everything else looks so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, I hate to give given too much credit to Jim Schwartz, but maybe we have. He deserves a lot of credit, but the players deserve a lot of credit,
They're out there on the field making plays.
Joe Woods, by the way, his defense in New Orleans is playing very well.
Yeah.
So let's not make it didn't work for him here for a variety of reasons, some his doing, but let's not make it seem like he's incompetent. I mean, his defense is playing well. Go ahead, Mike.
I do think the talent upgrade is probably vastly underrated in the big picture, but Joe Woods never adjusted to try and put guys in the best position to succeed like we've seen Jim Schwartz do. So I do think he deserved a fair slice and a pretty big slice of the blame pie here.
Absolutely. But it's also fair to say he is succeeding with another team. Right?
And he had succeeded elsewhere too.
Yes.
So
and I mean, think about their defensive line for a minute. You had nothing with like Jadeveon Clowney is a talented player, but he was unmotivated last year.
Yeah,
it was clearly he was not playing, and they had nothing else, nothing. And now they've got a ton of guys. I can't the talent upgrade that they've had on that defensive line in one off season is ridiculous.
And quiet is kept. Here's why I give them credit. Quiet is kept. We talked about the first 5 weeks. The Browns weren't taking the ball away. They're tied for 8th now.
They're on a flurry here these last few weeks.
Right, they've gotten, and that's just the way turnovers happen. Like you can't really plan for them, and sometimes you don't want to tell guys, hey, we're going to go punch the ball out. No, we want to get them on the ground and figure out what we're doing.
Right.
But all of a sudden now the Browns are getting turnovers, and going into the into the last part of this year, and I've always watched it like this. You watch how quarterbacks' numbers start to creep down. I'm seeing quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson throw for 185. Teams are still winning, but if your name is not C.J. Stroud, ain't nobody throwing for 350, 360s. I haven't seen it. It start to, especially when it gets a little colder, these numbers start to creep down a little bit. Even Patrick Mahomes, what do you have, 200-some yards in Germany?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way it is. So the Browns are putting themselves in position to kind of weather the storm a little bit and kind of lead with their defense. And I like the fact that when we called them out a little bit for the last couple of weeks, right? And, they could have went out there and played around because it was the Cardinals. But they went out there and smashed the Cardinals and held them to 58 yards. So, I love that, and I like that energy going into Baltimore week.
There were only four quarterbacks that had over 270 yards yesterday. C.J. Stroud had 470.
Balling.
Dak Prescott had 374 and a loss. Burrow had 348, and Sam Howell had 325.
Sam Howell, look at that.
Yeah,
he's putting up some numbers. Let me ask you guys this.
Yeah.
In terms of total yards allowed this season, the Browns have actually the top 3 performances this season.
Right.
Number 3 was Week 1 against Cincinnati, where they allowed 154 yards. Number 2 was Week 3 versus Tennessee, where they allowed 94 yards. And then the best was this week when they held Arizona to 58 yards. If you had to compare the two, this game against Arizona versus this game against Tennessee in Week 3.
Yeah.
Based on the opponent, knowing who is at quarterback, the skill positions, all that in context, which defensive performance do you think was more impressive? 94 yards against Tennessee or 58 yards against Arizona?
I think the Tennessee one.
Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like Ryan Tannehill, but he's a professional NFL quarterback.
I mean, Derrick Henry's a legitimate NFL running back.
Derrick Henry's played pretty well against everybody else this year.
Yeah.
And he could. Now, I thought they gave up on him too early in that game, but still.
I don't know. I'm going to say the Bengals.
The only reason I don't say the Bengals is the weather and Burrow's calf.
Right.
So you have to take that into account.
Yeah, you do. But the crazy part about it is you just see, like, it was raining, and it's raining for DBs too. I kept thinking myself, like, you can't play man-to-man coverage in this, and you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They weren't hurt. So I'm thinking, like, if you make a cut and you slip and fall, that's touchdown in man-to-man coverage. So, I would say probably the Tennessee one, just because of the name brand recognition. I mean, you had DeAndre Hopkins, you had Derrick Henry. They've been known to run the football a lot, and they could have got the screen game off a little bit. But to have them look like that was just crazy.
I would put Cincinnati second and yesterday third in terms of ranking the top 3 just because of the talent that was out there, or lack of talent that was out there.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything we did not hit on the defense before we move on to the offense?
Yeah, one more thing really, really, really quickly. So we talked about Denzel Ward's interception. We talked about Taki and his emergence. We talked about all the guys on the defensive line who have continued to just be phenomenal.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett, once again, had a sack. He's at 9.5, and I'm going to ask this real quick. I didn't even tell you guys beforehand, but Bill Barnwell of ESPN did his midseason awards today.
Yep.
And said Myles Garrett was his defensive player of the year
through
the first half of the season.
Yeah.
We all said before the season started that we thought Myles had that next level he could get to, and this was his best chance with all the talent. We're halfway through. Have you seen Myles Garrett step his game up to that level we had all wanted to? And I know yesterday wasn't the superhuman performance.
No, I think
that Indianapolis was, but I just want to ask that question now.
I think he had, like, Myles Garrett had been like a 99 out of 100.
Yeah.
And there was one more little mini level that only a few guys can reach. And in my opinion, he hadn't reached that mini level that only the special players can reach. And I think he's reached it this year. I think so.
The way you said that reminds me, I don't know when when the Cavs were in the playoffs against the Pacers that last year that LeBron was here, and he and I went at it in the locker room, and I said, there's a difference in Hall of Fame and greatest of all time, and it's that.
Yes.
I got to make sure it's on camera, and it's that.
Yeah.
And you know it when you see it.
That's right.
And we are seeing that this
Yes.
year out of Myles. He's turned games around. He's single-handedly won games. Now, I think we've talked about this in the past. He's gotten off to great starts in September before and then sort of tails off, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
That is correct, yes.
So we're now in November, and he's still playing at this really high level. I mean, he's doing things we've never seen before, jumping over lines and blocking kicks.
Yeah.
He had the scoop on the fumble. He would have got there yesterday.
Yep.
He would have destroyed Tune on a sack earlier. He was held.
Yep.
So his numbers were deflated a little bit by that. But we're seeing him at that level now into November, and we can only assume into December. I think he is hitting that next gear.
Yeah, and let's face it, part of the reason the defensive tackles are they're good and they're better, but he's making it because you can't double team the other guys as much,
right?
Because he's the thing you're most worried
about.
And
we talked about it when they hired Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
I said then, I was talking to people in the organization, part of the reason they chose Jim over Brian Flores was Myles. They felt like Schwartz's system would get the most out of Myles, and we're seeing that play out.
Yeah, no.
I will say this: the Defensive Player of the Year award is on the table the next 2 weeks. If you can go into Baltimore and dominate the way you've dominated some of the games this year, you're going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. He has to know that. Baltimore is playing lights out. They destroyed Seattle. Lamar Jackson looks like he's up for another MVP type caliber season. Zay Flowers, some of those guys. Baltimore is hitting on all cylinders. If he can go into Baltimore and disrupt what they're doing, and the Browns could somehow come out here with a victory. And then you got Pittsburgh coming up at home, prime time probably. Looks like an opportunity for a flex game. Everybody watching, you could win the Defensive Player of the Year award in the next 2 weeks.
Ownership was at the Cavs game last night. Did you guys see? Myles went to the game, and
Myles was there,
and the ovation that he got, and the grin,
bonkers, right?
The smile on his face. Guys, I'm telling you, he's motivated, he's engaged, he's happy, and that's huge because there's been other seasons, not in the not so recent past, that by this time it was already rickety and it was already falling off the tracks. But right now, everything's in front of them these next 2 weeks. If they take care of business, it's all right there. No matter what problems they've had up to this point, everything's there for them to win the division or whatever else. So he's engaged, he's happy, he's motivated, and he's playing at a high level, and that is huge for this team and this defense.
And you know what else he is that he often hasn't been this time of the year? Healthy.